I remember Ed from probably when I was 7 or 8 years old. My mother had taken me out to one of the places that he worked at to pick raspberries in the back, and I just remember him being a really funny guy, always telling jokes and laughing. He and During my childhood, he would come around when we had um, get-togethers of some kind. So over the years, I always saw him here and there, but it wasn't until um, I was with Michael that I really got to know Ed, and I learned a lot about him. I think we were painting in her apartment, and Ed came up and was just chit-chatting with us and was really impressed that a bunch of girls were, using hammers and paintbrushes and fixing the place up. And he talked about like how proud he was of us and that he wasn't used to seeing that kind of thing. And it was that day that he told me a lot about his past, stuff that like I hadn't known. When he was 14, he had like run away and stole a car and made it somewhere down south. I can't remember where, but ended up dumping the car, stealing another car, and moving around a bit until he got caught. And he did say that he was on the chain gang. But that was crazy. And he talked a little bit about it and he laughed. He had so many stories to tell. I don't remember all of them. I wish I remembered more of them, but I remember just being like, wow, this guy lived a really interesting life. Like all the things that he saw and witnessed, experienced were just pretty crazy, pretty out there. One of the things that I remember the most about Ed is how much he cared about Mike and how hard he took his passing. I think we really connected on that because he knew that I was having a very hard time as well. So he would often call me and ask me how I was doing and just talk about how he just still couldn't believe it, and it was just unreal for him to be, I guess, in a world where he didn't have Mike, because they were really, I would say, best friends, like best buds. They would call each other all the time, and Ed would come over to play chess, or Mike would go over to his house. I would drop him off sometimes on my way to work, and he would hang out with Ed for the day, playing chess and probably tinkering around with old broken stuff, working on whatever it was, garden, weed whacking, snow blowing, or, whatever Ed needed help with Mike at the end of the school day, or sometimes he would walk home. The last time I talked to Ed, he did mention that he wanted to start coming over more and just talking about Michael and just, remembering stuff and telling each other stories to kind of keep his memory alive. And I didn't take the last call when he called. That was on August 20th. He did leave me a message saying that he was just thinking about me and wanted to know how I was doing.
I figured you didn't go to your comfort area out there outside with all the rain. And I just wanted you to know I'm thinking of you. Bye-bye.
Towards the end, Ed did seem to be forgetting a lot and having a more difficult time focusing on finishing a conversation. He would often start talking about something and then kind of zone out and forget what he was saying, or even forget parts of the story that he was telling. you could definitely tell that he was having a hard time. He did cry a couple of times when I went to visit him, just after Michael passed. He did take it very hard. I don't think he was doing as much mechanical stuff and fixing things like he used to. He was always known to be able to like fix anything and everything. I think that's probably one of the reasons that him and Michael hit it off so well and were such good friends, is because they were both fixers. They loved taking stuff apart and maybe putting it back together, or maybe not. Maybe just, I don't know, tinkering with it. I do remember one time when our boiler broke here in the house. It had cracked, and Michael said the only person that he's ever known to be able to braze something like that was Ed Chanowski. So we called him up, and we were partly joking with him, but also partly serious, and asked him if he'd come over and braze the boiler for us, and laughing, and Misty promised to make him some galunkies or some other dish that she knew he really liked to try to get him to come over. And he knew that he was past that stage, because he was like, oh, I can't do that anymore. And he didn't, but it was fun just kind of teasing him about it and laughing with him about it, because he was known to be very handy. I went over to Ed's house a couple of times with Michael to lend him various tools, or to pick up Mike after playing chess. So I had been to his house a couple of times. I remember one time I was driving down Shrewsbury Street with Michael, and we saw Ed riding his bike, and he was flying down the street. And just before that, Michael had been saying how Ed can barely walk, his knees are bad, he had 2 knees replaced, and he was just flying on his bike. And another time when I was at Blackstone Plaza with my mother, we saw Ed on his bike. And my mom turned around and did a double take and was like, was that Ed Chanowski on his bike? And it was not long after I had seen him on Shrewsbury Street, so I knew for sure that it was him. And it was just really funny to see him getting around so well on his bike when everybody thought like he could barely walk. Ed did talk to me about death a couple of times. I think he was really choked up when Michael passed, and he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that somebody younger than him had passed. And I do remember him saying to me that if it was him, he could understand because he's old, but not Michael. Another thing that stood out to me about Ed and death was he had a whole mantle covered in ashes from family or friends that had passed, and he was the only person that asked me if he could please have some of Michael's ashes because he wanted to put them up on his mantle along with all the others that he had there. And I can't really remember who any of the other people were that were on it, but I thought it was interesting how he really felt like that was having them there with him, by having a little piece of each and every one of the people that were important in his life.